Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Rave Social Podcast. I'm your host, Jaiden, and today we have Nicole with us. She is incredible. She's a client of mine. She is a brand designer and a marketing strategist for specifically like beauty brands, hairstylists, people of that nature. And we're so excited to have her on the podcast today. We're going to talk a little bit about your visual identity as a brand. So I feel like that's really valuable to everyone, even if you're not in the beauty industry specifically. But welcome, Nicole, and why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do?
Thank you. I'm so excited to chat with you. So I have been in the beauty industry for over 20 years now. I started as a hairstylist. I worked for big product companies in education, development, training, marketing, social media, pretty much everything. But now I run my own agency where I help hairstylists grow their own brands, reach their dream clients, and really build a future for themselves that can sustain for the long haul. I'm a huge fan of hairstylists making money. I think that's a
Hell
controversial
yeah.
take in the world for some reason, but hairstylists have gotten a bad rap for hairstyling being a fallback career. And I just don't, that's like, it's one of the hardest jobs out there. And so I feel really passionate about helping hairstylists find success, whatever that looks like for them, whether it's behind the chair or launching programs or products, whatever their big dreams are, I want to help them achieve them.
Yes, and you're absolutely right. Like for some reason, hairstylists do get like a bad rap for like that is a fallback career or whatever. But honestly, like some of my closest friends are hairstylists and I see what they deal with every day and I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, I could
it's wild.
never do that. Yeah, it's just
It's,
wild. Like
yeah, it's
what
wild out there. And I think that it's getting better. I got my license in 2001. And so we've come a long way in the last 23 years. But yeah, I think it's just reinforcing that message that like, no matter what career you're in, you deserve to make a good living and you deserve to do the things that you want to do. And no matter what other people's perception is, it's up to you to decide what your dreams look like or what success looks like for you. So again, I think our industry is getting better, but I think we still have a ways to go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about like visual brands and we can apply this
Yeah,
to the beauty industry, but I know that's like your bread and butter. You're amazing at it. You create the most beautiful brands for people. Like it's
thank
just
you.
amazing. You're welcome. And I just want to talk about like why is that important in the beauty industry? Because I feel like honestly, a lot of the stylists that I know like don't even really have branding or
Hmm.
a logo or like colors or anything like that. And I know it
Yeah,
goes beyond that. So why don't you, yeah, let me know what's up with that.
sure. I'll tell you all about it. One of the reasons why I started this business was I know that hairstylists are not set up for success because I was one. And jumping into this industry, myself and the friends that I had when we were starting, the struggle, it's a struggle. It's a slog to get to a place where you are making decent money, you have a decent clientele. And the industry as a whole doesn't really help hairstylists become entrepreneurs. And when you become a hairstylist, even if you're working in a commission salon, you are essentially the business because without you, none of this stuff happens. So you
Yeah.
are the brand, you are the person holding all of it together. And that's a lot of pressure, but it can be really exciting because you can build a really dynamic brand around yourself if you have a strong point of view. And so one of the things that I really wanted to focus on when I started this business was helping hairstylists kind of see the big picture and think outside of the industry because there is a very stereotypical aesthetic when it comes to hairstylist brands. And there's nothing wrong with them per se, but when you are building a brand, you want to stand out and you want to make an impact so that people want to watch more of your content, want to follow you, and then hopefully want to book you for a service. And so when it comes to your visual identity, I mean, I know we're not supposed to judge a book by their cover, but when it comes to social media and marketing, like capturing somebody's attention, you have literal seconds to grab somebody's attention. And the visual identity that you create for your business is the thing that's catching them. And so for hairstylists, that means being really consistent with your identity and the work that you do. I think it's really important for hairstylists to not just have our logo and colors and fonts, which of course are really important to like the overall brand story, but what kind of hair do you want to do? Like, what do you want that hair to look like? Like, what is your work? What is the art that you're putting out into the world? And what's the story that you're trying to tell with the visuals and your work and your messaging? Like, it all kind of flows together. And so there are hairstylists in the industry that do this really well. They have become known for one or two things. They've leaned in, they've become specialists in that thing, and then they're able to launch education. They're able to do more. They're seen by brands. The door is really open for you when you're able to create a brand around what you really love to do and what you're passionate about and what you're really good at. So pulling all of that together with a strong visual identity is really that initial, like, oh, like this is something different, or oh, I haven't seen anything like this, or continuing to have that visual identity over and over again is what builds that brand recognition. It's why you can always recognize a MAC Cosmetics ad because their visual identity is so strong. You can always recognize a Target ad. Those brands, obviously they're huge companies, but those brands have done a lot of work to hone that visual identity. And so you always recognize them. And that's
Yeah.
really what I tried to do with hairstylists is create a visual identity for them that they can maintain, that is consistent, and that builds that recognition for them.
That was a beautiful explanation. And it's true for every industry. Like, I think a big mistake I see people make, especially on social media, is they are sometimes using this font. And I know I'm talking about fonts and that doesn't sound that serious, but it's true. Like, if you're like
Yeah,
a different font on every post, on every reel, if you're using different colors in every post, if your
yeah.
B-roll looks really inconsistent, if you're always in a different room in your house, like all of that is confusing to your audience on a very subconscious level. Like, they don't realize that they don't know what's going on, but they do know that they don't know what's going on, And if you have a
Yeah.
stronger identity and you have consistent tone of your messaging, a consistent look on your page, a consistent B-roll, all of those things, you become really sticky in people's minds, and then
Hmm.
they think of you way more often, which is like, again, it's so subconscious, but it makes a huge impact on the longevity and like the strength of your brand.
Yeah, 100%. And I also think that you talk about like subconscious, when you're always doing something different and maybe you feel like, oh, my branding is boring. I don't want to do the same thing all the time. Your branding is not for you. Like, yes, it should
Yeah.
represent you, but your branding is not for you. It's for your audience. And if you're consistently changing things up and doing things in a different way, you're always retraining your audience. You're losing people because what you have told them you are, now you're something different. And so you have to like retrain them to understand who you are now. And so, yes, you can make, you can have flexibility in your branding, but you really have to have an overall understanding of like, what am I saying? What do I look like? How am I presenting myself? Because it's harder for your audience to connect with you if they're constantly seeing something new.
You're not going to be like sticky in their mind. And it also just makes your life so much harder because
Yeah.
the amount of content that you have to put out with the new brand or whatever until it gets to the point that it was before you did that
Mm-hmm.
is like a lot. That's just a lot of work. And it's not saying,
It really
I'm not
is.
saying like it can't be done. And I'm also not saying like never ever change your branding. But I do think it's something that to be conscious of. Like, are you just a little bit bored of it right now? Because like, if you're just a little bored of it, that's going to go away. It will be fine.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of things that you can do in your brand to freshen things up without your audience necessarily recognizing that you've done it. I think there are ways to there's a way to adjust, there's a way to adapt, ways to adapt. But I'll speak for myself. Like, what my branding, I feel like is fairly recognizable because I use a signature
Yes.
color. I have a group of fonts that, even though I kind of cycle through them, it's not always the same one, but I'm
Yeah.
using a group of them that are always consistent. My colors are always very consistent. My photography
Yes.
style, I've invested a lot in my photography. So when people see it, like, I actually, like, people have tried to steal my photos, and like I have other people coming to me telling me like, isn't this your photo? So like that kind of recognition, even though like obviously I don't want my photos stolen, but that's the kind of recognition that you want, is you want people to see your stuff and be like, oh, I absolutely know that that's Nicole's because I know what her stuff looks like.
Yeah. What would you say to people who maybe are not that like aesthetically inclined, or maybe they just don't even know. Like they're like, I know what you're saying, but I don't know how to even do that.
Keeping it simple in the beginning is the best answer for me. I think like Canva is a great tool, but it can also really, can I curse on here? It can really like,
Yes.
okay, it can really fuck people up because you have 1,000 different kinds of templates. They're always, and it's almost like an algorithm sometimes where it's like it's feeding you the most popular ones, and it's like walking into a candy store and being like, you can have anything you want, but you don't want all of those things. You want the stuff that works for you. And so for me, it's like if you feel uncomfortable with choosing your branding, or you're not really sure how to put things together, I would keep it simple. I would choose one or two fonts. I would keep your color palette minimal because, like, especially in the hair industry, so much of your content is going to be humans. Like, it's going to be people. And so
Yeah.
you don't need 8 colors in your color palette. You don't really need, you probably don't even need 4. Like, your color palette is going to be your surroundings and your work. And so to me, it's far more important to get really good at taking your content and understanding what it looks like. Like, where am I taking it? Am I taking it in a with a busy ass background and people walking by? Is my station a mess? Like, is there bad lighting? Like, those kinds of things I think are far more important in the beginning. Get really good at taking pictures and video. Get used to capturing your work and setting up your camera and taking video and getting b-roll footage. I think right now it's like the easiest way to create content is just like cutting up video and putting text over top, and then you have content. And hopefully, I mean, obviously you want it to make sense with your brand and you want it to be
Yeah.
strategic, but to me that's a much better use of time in the beginning, is to get really good at taking content and understanding, like, what does your salon look like? Because if your salon is all white and your branding is dark and moody and or lots of color, somebody's going to book you and then walk into your salon and be like, okay, wow, this wasn't what I was expecting. And that's the opposite of what you want. So you just want to try to tie in the social media experience with the in real life, in person experience.
Would you say that if someone is working at a salon that maybe they feel is like, let's just say the word chuggy. Like maybe they're working at a
It's
salon
not
that
their ideal aesthetic.
yeah, they're like, would you say like you should probably look at moving salons? Like what would your advice be there? Because you're right, it is most of your content's going to be taken in that space.
Yeah, I think that's tough. I think that especially for stylists that are in big salons where there's a lot of stylists, or working in a salon that like maybe is not their ideal aesthetic, not what they would do for themselves, you can get a backdrop. You can set up a backdrop somewhere. If there's not space for a backdrop, maybe it's finding somewhere outside that you can take your content. And you really don't need a ton of space. I think that if you could find a corner that's like pretty simple, or even a lot of salons, like they'll stand in the doorway and they'll take their content facing into the salon. A lot of times you can create like a dark background and it kind of it mutes everything, or it kind of like blends everything in the background, and all of your focus is on your subject.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't like necessarily recommend jumping into a new salon unless there's other reasons that you want to go. But I
Yeah.
think there's resources that you can look into, like getting a backdrop, or maybe talking to the salon owner and saying you want to take your content more seriously or your brand more seriously. And maybe that's something that the salon owner would be interested in helping you do. I
Yeah.
know there's a lot of really great salon owners out there that would be willing to help.
Yeah, absolutely. That's such a good take. And I liked something else that you said where you were like, if your brand is very like bright and cheery and whatever, and then the salon that you work in is like the opposite of that, I know that does like affect the client experience because there's a bit of a mismatch there. So when clients come to you to work with you on a project and they're like, I'm this big, bright, bold, cheery person, and my salon is dark and moody or whatever, like what do you do there? How would you coach someone through that?
I would try to incorporate aspects of both. I mean, I think it also depends on the stylist. Sometimes if the stylist has like a really strong personality, the experience is them. Like, a lot of times
Yes.
when people go to get their hair done, they go for the hair, but they come back for the person. I mean, I've never gone to a hairstylist that I didn't feel somewhat connected to. I've had my hair done by a lot of people, and the people that I go back to are the ones that I feel the most connected to, and because I like the experience of hanging out with them, and obviously they also do a good job. So
Yeah.
I think it depends on the person. I think that there are times when you can incorporate aspects of both, and I think that sometimes, again, it's really trying to figure out what kind of content are you creating in the space, and how can we take that and incorporate things like color and fonts, to kind of mold the two together and find
Yeah.
find something that works for you and feels like you, but also is going to kind of tell people what the experience is like in the salon. And again, I think the experience is the stylist, but you also want to, like, when you walk into a restaurant and you've never been there before and you're like, do I seat myself? Do they bring me the check? Do I pay at the desk? Like,
Yeah.
you want to know what's happening. And so kind of seeing what to expect when you get there, I think is still really important. So it's just finding
Yeah.
that middle ground of both.
Yeah, and I feel like if you have a strong personal brand in the sense of like what you're saying, people know your personality, they know what it's like to be in your orbit. I think you can get away with a little bit more play in that. Like it's okay if your
For
salon
sure.
space maybe isn't like the most perfect ever because like they are coming to see you, which like brings me to something that you say a lot is like you need to have a strong personal brand and you have to have like your point of view. And like I
Yes.
think those are like stronger than really anything else that you have. How would you go about uncovering what your point of view is? Like if there's a stylist listening to this that's like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's really hard. I think it's hard to get to a point where you feel comfortable sharing your point of view, because your point of view might not align with everybody. And when I talk about point of view, I think about, like, what is your expertise and how has your experience gotten you to a point where this is what you do. This is how you do it. These are the results you get. And why do you feel like these results, or why do you feel like this process, this approach is the best one for you, the best one for your clients? That might not align with everybody. It might not be what everybody does. And I think in an industry where we are, as hairstylists are really encouraged to follow, we are encouraged to do the same thing, to follow the trends, to style the hair the same way, to take content in the same way. Brands are always like, trying to feed us the next big thing. I think it really is an opportunity for you as a hairstylist kind of like take a step back and be like, what do I really want to do and say? Like, who do I want to be in this industry? And I think it also is an opportunity to think about, what are the things that I really don't like about this industry? What are the
Yeah.
things that ruffle my feathers, or like make me, like, give me the ick about things that the industry does or has done? And how can my point of view shift that? Like, even in a small way, how can my opinions, how can my expertise and my experience maybe shift the mindset of somebody else in the industry, especially if you want to go into education and you want to teach something that you have developed, or an approach that you do in the salon because you feel like it's really beneficial. I think those things are so important. It's like, why does somebody care about this
Yeah.
technique? Why does somebody care about what you do? You have to make them care because it has to benefit them too. Like, they have to see the value in what you're offering. And to me, that means you have to be like delusionally passionate. Delusionally? That's a word, right? You have to be so
Yeah.
delusional about what you do, like, in a good way. Like, you have to be
Yeah.
so passionate about the thing that you do and believe in it so wholeheartedly that other people are like, well, wow, like, obviously, like, it's working for her. Like, maybe it can work for me too.
Absolutely. And I was just saying, like, in being the leader, like, you have to be the one
Yeah.
that's like gonna lead them to that and show them.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And I think that for hairstylists, again, I think it's hard because when you think about hair, there's only so many ways to do hair. Like, hair at its core is like very fundamental. Like, there's certain principles that you really can't get away from. People are cutting hair, they're coloring hair, they're doing extensions. So, like, at the end of the day, there's not a lot of differences. Like, even if you want to teach something, there's probably somebody else teaching something pretty similar. So, how is your point of view going to change the experience in a class versus that other person that might be teaching something similar? Like, you two are very different people, And that's the thing that's going to make those two classes
That's a
different
differentiator.
experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, like you are the differentiator. And like you got my mind thinking a little bit too about like there's so many opportunities for hairstylists that go beyond teaching someone how to do hair. Like you could educate someone on like how to develop a beautiful client experience. Like if you
Hmm.
have mastered that, like you could teach that. You don't have to teach hair. You could teach like, do you have a beautiful onboarding system? Do you have, is your client retention rate like through the roof? Why? Can you teach people how
Yeah.
to do that too? Like it doesn't always have to be just about the hair, I think.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And I've actually worked with a lot of hairstylists who have kind of branched into these kinds of educational opportunities, whether it's business coaching or experience. I worked with a client who she moved her whole life, like, and moved her business and had to start from scratch. And she was able to
That's crazy.
basically like completely recreate her clientele, and now she teaches other stylists how to do what she did. And she has the most important thing is that she has the proof to back it up. So as long as you have the social proof and the expertise, and like it didn't just work for you, it worked for other people too. I think that's the important part, is you really have to show up with the proof that like it's going to work on a grand scale. And I do think that there are so many opportunities for hairstylists. Like when I went to beauty school, I didn't even know that the jobs that I ended up having existed. Working for
Yeah.
beauty companies, like doing education development and working at trade shows. And like, I never knew those things existed when I became a hairstylist. So the opportunities in this industry are so vast. And the great part is that you as a hairstylist can create those opportunities for yourself. You just have to have you it always goes back to the brand. You have to build a brand that people trust, and it has to be built on something that people see value in. And at the end of the day, it's like what's in it for the audience, what's in it for the client, what's in it for the student. How can you add benefit to somebody's life through your services or your teachings or a product that you want to create?
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely have to add value in some way. And that could be in what you're teaching. It could be your personality can add value depending on who
Sure.
you are, you know, and if you're a fun person to follow. I know I feel that way about certain hairstylists. I'm like, I like following you
Yeah.
because you're funny or whatever. I'm not even your client, but I just enjoy like the way you talk about things. So I think that's so important. One other question I had for you is like when it comes to the competition, because I also feel like that's a big thing. It's big in every industry, but like
Yeah.
especially hair because the barrier to entry isn't so high. Same with social media management.
Right.
But the barrier is not so high, so there are a lot of people doing it. And when it comes to competition, and your visual identity, what is the case there? Are people really going to look at your Instagram page and think, oh, she looks cool, I'm going to go to her over their competitor? What have you seen?
I do think that there are people out there that are going to want to go to the it hairstylist. I think there are people in our industry, just like any industry, that rise to the top, that become recognized on social media or recognized through, you know, whatever avenues or, you know, whatever opportunities that they have, whether it's through brands or through like consumer facing brands or just their own personal brand. I think there are
Yeah.
people that connect with the greater audience, you know, the world on a different level. And so, yes, there are people that are going to build their clientele because they have that recognition on social media. But when it comes to competition, I think like there's always going to be competition. Like in any industry that you're in, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
But you have to have the mindset of that you are not in competition with other people. You have to feel confident in what you do. And I know that like there are a lot of hairstylists that don't feel confident in what they do, and they're trying to get better. They're trying to find that confidence because our industry is so big and it
Yeah.
feels like it's very oversaturated. But if you can really like look inward and think about the things that make you different and special and lean into those things and find something that you're really passionate about and do more of that thing, then I think that you have a better opportunity to reach people than somebody who's just trying to do everything. I mean, I know like the like niching down is like a really big conversation in a lot of industries, but to me, it's much easier to talk to one group of people that needs a certain thing and you offer that thing than it is to talk to everybody who might need all kinds of different services. So
Yeah.
when it comes to like the visual aspect of that though, I do think that when I go to, let's say I'm on TikTok and I see a TikTok ad or a creator that has a cool product and I go to their other platforms, like I care about what it looks like. I want it to look like I expect it to, for the price point, for the type of product that it is, for like their personality. Like I have perceptions immediately of like what I expect of that brand. And if I get to their Instagram or their website and I'm like, this looks like a scam, or like this looks like they didn't, I want to know they spent the time and effort on trying to get my money. Like what are you
Yeah.
doing to entice me to spend my money with you? Because at the end of the day, this is all a business. Like being a hairstylist is not a hobby. You might have started doing it because you enjoyed it, but at the end of the day, like being a hairstylist isn't a hobby. You're allowed to make money. You're supposed to make money. So what are you doing in order to build this business for yourself that is going to sustain you for as long as you want it to? I know that a lot of hairstylists get to a point where like their body is can't handle it anymore. It's a lot of time on your feet, and I understand that. So like what's the next step after that? Like is there an opportunity for you to stay in the industry but do something different that isn't behind the chair 12 hours a day? So I feel like there is competition in that level where like if I go to one hairstylist account and it looks beautiful and curated to a point where I still know it's them, I still feel their
Hmm.
personality coming through, but I can tell they have spent the time and effort on it, versus 25 pictures of the same pose of the back of somebody's head. After two or three, I can kind of get what you do. Like, and that's not no shade at people. I know people are doing their best. And like, I never want people to feel like I'm speaking down about their content because that's what they're doing. And I know people are always doing their best, but
Yeah.
there has to be a time where you kind of take a step back and look like, is what I'm doing moving the needle for me?
That's the thing. It's like no shame at all, but there's if you want to grow your business in whatever way you are thinking that is, maybe that's raise your prices, whatever, move salons, blah blah blah. It could be anything. Then you will have to take the steps to get there, which may include not posting the back of someone's head, And so it's like, that's true. You could feel ashamed that you've done that, or you could just recognize that that got you to where you are now, but it's
Mm-hmm.
not going to get you to the next level that you're wanting to get to. And that's okay.
Right.
That's okay. Yeah.
And I feel the same way about like DIY branding. DIY your brand. Like do
Yeah.
something. If you're doing something, I'm never like great. I'm never going to shame anybody for trying or doing something, but DIY branding is only going to get you so far. Unless you're like
Yeah.
really naturally talented at design, like maybe you can get yourself all to where you want to go. But I do
Yeah.
think that there are a lot of people that get to a certain point and then they're like, okay, this isn't working anymore. How can I get to that next step? And it means investing. It means investing back into your business. It means hiring
Yes.
experts that are specialists in what they do, just like people come to you because you're an expert. So again, it's
Yeah.
all about that mindset.
Absolutely. And I think part of that too, this is a little bit of a side note, but like, do you really want to spend 17 hours trying to figure out how to DIY your situation? Or would
No,
that 17 hours be better suited you developing your next course, you writing out your business plan for how you're going to launch education or something? Like, is that time spent? Where is it spent the best? And I think
right.
everyone deals with that in business. Like, if you're a business owner, you've totally dealt with that challenge of like, I can do it myself, but if I do
But
it
I don't want
myself,
to.
yeah, I don't want to. And like that's
Yeah.
taking up time that I could be spending doing like these other things that I do want to do or that are going to
Yeah.
get me to that next level as well. So I think that's just also an important note. But like I feel the same way as you about like social media. Is I'm like people can totally do their own social media. Like you absolutely can. It just depends on like if you enjoy it and if that's where
Mm-hmm.
you want to spend your time and if you want to think about it 49 hours out of the week. It's
Yeah.
just like those are the things that you're trading off.
Yeah. And I think that it's all about priorities in life and business. It's all about priorities. And I think this also goes back to like when I talk about priorities, I also think about this idea of like the dream client, like this is a conversation we have a lot in all of our industries,
Yes.
is like, who are we speaking to, this dream client? Your dream client is the one that's going to pay for your services. Like at the end of the day, your dream client is the one that wants the thing that you want to sell.
Yeah.
So your dream client can look like a lot of different people. It doesn't necessarily have to be in this certain tax bracket or this certain city, or they don't have to drive this kind
Yes.
of car. Those things are important to know, but you have to get past that and think about who is
Oh, yeah.
prioritizing their services. And if people are prioritizing getting extensions, then they're going to pay for their extensions. It doesn't matter if they're making $25 an hour or they're making $250,000 a year. They're going
Yeah.
to prioritize that thing that they want. And so it's important to get past that idea of like, I have to speak to a demographic of people. You have to speak to a person who wants the thing that you have. And that's like what it comes
Yes.
down to. And so like a lot of these mindset shifts in especially my industry is it's like changing the way people think about how they speak through their content. And
Yeah.
you're not talking to like a CEO. You're talking to a woman who has thinning hair, who wants full long, who wants to be able to, swing her hair around or do lots of, like Sabrina Carpenter's hair, she wants that
Yeah.
full hair and she doesn't have that, but you can give it to her. So like those are the
Yeah.
kinds of things you have to tell a story. You have to bring people into the experience. And at the end of the day, it's like, oh, you want that thing? Oh, okay, I can give it to you. Like I have it. You can have it, but this is what it costs.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a big thing that I do with my clients too. Your target audience, in the sense of what people teach you in business school and what people teach you on social media, is like your target audience is an age, a demographic, there some different like psychological things that they think, blah, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, blah. And it's like, yeah. And I think that like it's good to have that idea in your head, but
Mm-hmm.
bigger than that, your target audience is just a problem that you're solving. Like your
Yeah.
target audience is just a problem. It doesn't really matter where they live unless you are extremely geographical, which like even hairstylists aren't that geographical. Like I travel for my hair.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah.
travel four
People will
hours.
travel. People will get on a plane to get their hair done. I mean,
Absolutely they
and you
will.
see that a lot in some of the biggest hair influencers that are making content right now. I mean, all of their people come from all over the place.
Yeah.
It's thinking about, what do I have to offer? What's problem am I solving? And thinking about like problem versus solution, it's not just the problem. It's like the problem can also just be a desire. I
A
really
hundred
want
percent.
I really want to be platinum blonde. That's a problem I have because I'm not. So
Yeah.
how can you give for somebody that thing? And like obviously there's a lot, I mean that's an extreme
Yeah.
thing to do, is like take somebody platinum blonde, but that's a problem that somebody has. And if you have the solution, then you have to tell them, you have to give them all the reasons why your approach to taking somebody platinum blonde is the best one, and that you're going to be the one that can get them
Yes.
there because they've
And
probably gone places where they have effed it up.
oh, yeah, certainly. And like that plays into your content so much. Like if
Yeah,
you want to be the go-to, I will get you platinum girly, then your visual identity needs to show that. Like you need to have so many blondes,
absolutely.
so many transformations, and showing that process. Like I think that's one thing you and I have talked about before, is that like stylists, yeah, a before and after is awesome, but people actually really want to see your process. They don't really care about the chemical makeup most likely, but they want to
Yeah.
see you like mix up the bleach and like how
Yeah.
are you like doing the weave? Like they want to see you put the foils in. Like how long did this process take? That's a big one. I wish more people would share that. Like here was the
Yeah.
process. This was a 5-hour day to get her from
Right.
here to here. Like,
Yeah, the reality of what it really looks like. I think
yeah,
that's such a good point. And I do think people want to know. They want to see, like, I had an experience at a salon once. Generally, I've always like known my hairstylist. Working in the industry,
yeah,
I've always known the people that did my hair. But I went to a salon, a very fancy salon in LA, and I was willing to invest in this stylist. I had the worst experience ever because I never knew what was happening. I mean, obviously I kind of knew, like I was at the chair, I was at the bowl, I was in that bowl for like 40 minutes. And I don't know what she did, how many times she toned my hair, what was happening, but like the assistant kept coming in and out and nobody ever explained what was happening. And I just laid there because like what am I supposed to do? So it's
That's
things like that that
crazy.
it really is one of the like, and I did tell her afterwards that I had a terrible experience, but I also like was like for next time, maybe just let people know what's going on. But those kinds of things people do want to know. They want to see, and I think it also shows a level of confidence and it instills trust in your audience when you're willing to pull back the curtain and show them the process because the before and after might be beautiful, but maybe that before and after was completely photoshopped afterwards, you don't know.
Yeah.
So showing people the process and letting people in about like, okay, you really want this, okay, here's how much it takes, here's why it costs XYZ, and here's how long it takes, and here's the maintenance that comes with it, and all of the things that have to happen in order for you to have this thing. And this is also something that comes up when people come to me for branding. Like, okay, you want these editorial style photos, you want this level of production quality. This is not cheap. Like this is not
Yeah.
something that like you can't stock image your way through this. Like this is something that people invest thousands and thousands of dollars in every 4 months or every 6 months, whatever it is. It takes a lot of effort and money to have a brand that looks like a lot of the Pinterest boards I get. And so I think
Yeah.
that's another thing that has to be like there's a little bit of a reality check of like, can you really invest in order to get this thing that you want? Because I can help you get there, but
Yeah.
I can only get you so far. I can only get you to the point where like I can deliver all the things to you. Eventually you have to take the baton and do the stuff. You have to put it into practice. So
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
there's that
There's like,
level of conversation that has to happen.
yeah. And that's like two pieces up in that process are like, what is the investment and what does that look like and what does it pay off, and then what is my like maintenance. And I feel like that really applies to hairstylists. Like, what is the maintenance on this? Like, yeah, you can take me platinum, but like then do I have to come see you every 2 weeks, or like what
Yep.
is that going to look like? And the more of those questions that you can answer right there on your Instagram feed, on your website, whatever it is, the better, more aligned, like we don't really need to say the word dream client, but like the more aligned your clients are going to be.
Yeah.
They're going to come in knowing what they're going to get out of it, understanding the maintenance. Like then you're going to have less people being pissed at you later on when they're like, oh my
Yeah.
God, this is way too expensive, I cannot keep this up. Like if you're clear up front, those people, like your client retention will go up and all of those things, and that just helps your business be more profitable. It helps you just have a better mental health. You're not always finding new clients. Like it's
Yeah.
so beneficial for you to be more open about those things.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think that the more you can tell people your, I don't know, boundaries is not the right word. Maybe it is. The more you tell people like what you do and what you don't do, how far you're willing to go, or like the things that you don't accept, the values that you have, those kinds of things play into it as well. Because
Yeah.
to find those aligned people, you have to be really clear about, okay, so here are my policies. Like, what here's what it's going to take to get you where you want to go. And then like getting people to commit to that thing. That's why so many hairstylists have like you have to sign waivers and policies and you have to accept terms, and because it is a real commitment, and these services can sometimes not go the way clients want them to go because their expectations are not realistic. So it's so important for hairstylists to be really honest and upfront and share the the things that go really well, but also the things that might not go well and like why they didn't, so that clients understand that sometimes they're not going to get everything they want in their lunch break.
Yeah. That's so true. That's like a whole nother side of it that I didn't even think about, but it's
Yeah,
like, yeah, like tell them what they're not going to get, or like what's not possible too.
right.
Yeah. I think just clarity. And I think that applies to literally every single business. When I see people struggling, other service providers with their social media, and I look at it and I go to their page, I'm like, well, nobody knows what it's like to work with you. And
Yeah.
when there are so many options, there's thousands of coaches, thousands of hairstylists, thousands of photographers. Like, if they don't know what it's like to work with you, like, they're going to go with whatever one they're the most comfortable with.
Yeah.
Certainly your delivered product matters, right? Like, certainly the quality of the hair that you do matters, or the level of your photos matters, but not as much as you think it does when it comes down to the wire and they need to book somebody. They're going to book somebody that they feel comfy with.
Yeah. I mean, trust is like really the core of every single creative brand, I think, because when you think of like creative industries, again, there's a lot of us. There's a lot of hairstylists. There's a lot of beauty professionals. There's a lot of creative entrepreneurs. And I think there's is since 2020 and the pandemic, I think there's like an influx of people that started their own businesses and went on their own. And, and I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
So it really does benefit you to share the experience with people and let people in and let them see what it's like to be in the space. Like, what can they expect when they get there? What are the fun little things that you do for your clients when they're there? I mean, it's something that I think it might seem really small, but a lot of people like that work from home and maybe they come to get their hair done while they have to work. Okay, so do
Yeah.
you have things that make it easy for them to work while they're getting their hair done? It's little
Yeah.
things like that that I think might seem small, but in the grand scheme of things, there might be somebody that's like, oh my God, I do need to work while I'm there. I don't want to feel uncomfortable bringing out my laptop. Like, I want to feel like
Yeah.
it's fine, or things like that. I just like, what are the extras that you're doing for your clients? Like, tell people what they are, like
Yeah.
share that with people so that when they get there, they know what they're getting.
Yeah. And like, if you're one of those stylists who's like, I'm actually down to like not chat the whole time, and if you want it to be quiet, we can, like, that is like a huge thing for you to share on social media in so many different ways. Like, why the experience with me is different, because like, if you're having a day where you don't want to chat for 5 hours, like, you're
Yeah.
good. We're gonna
I
chill,
actually
and you
think
don't
that
have to
would
do
be
that.
like great content too. Like, think about the constant noise that you see reel after reel after reel, and then finding a
Yeah.
reel that's just like quiet and it's just you
Yeah.
working on a client. Like, I actually think that's great content because there's probably somebody out there that's like, I don't want to chat. I don't want to do the small
There's
talk.
certainly, I just feel like there's some more people than you even can imagine are like, I
Yeah.
don't want to get my hair done because I don't want to talk.
Like, when I go get a facial, like, my esthetician has a little box that you can check that's like, I want a silent appointment. And I feel like in that experience, like, I don't want to chat. I want to
Yeah.
I want to zone out. I don't want to tell you about work or my kid or anything. I just want to keep it quiet. So it's like minimal conversation, and it's the best. It's the best to not
Yeah.
have to think about topics of conversation to bring up. So yeah, I think those things
I
really
love
matter
that.
in the grand scheme of things.
I feel like this has been so valuable. Just this conversation can apply to so much more than just beauty industry individuals, although it's really, really important for you as well if you are in the beauty industry. And before you go, I just have one final question, and it is this.
Okay.
If you
Okay,
could
I'm ready.
give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be?
Don't be so scared to like to have people see you. I think that that's something that the more I climbed the corporate ladder, the more I had to put myself in front of people. I had to do sales meetings, I had to talk in front of big groups of people, I had to present on stages, and I was never like, that's just not natural to me, and I was very scared to do it. And I was scared to be seen, I was scared to be judged, but like, nobody cares. Nobody's worrying about you. We're all so self-absorbed. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way. I
It's
mean,
so
like, we're all
true.
so worried about ourselves that they're not worrying about how you look or the thing you might say. Like, I say like 1,000 times a day. I
Me
might
too.
say and it's just I'm 43 years old. It's come to this point where I've literally lived in Southern California my whole life. How do you want me to talk? It's just the way
You're
it
like,
is.
I am a valley girl, okay?
I I am. So it's just the way that it is. So I think if I could give my younger self advice, it would be, don't be so scared to be seen. you know what you're doing. You are really good at your job. That's another thing that I don't think I ever really knew, was like how good I really was at what I was doing, because I
Yeah.
was constantly trying for the next thing, constantly trying to be better, constantly trying to grow. What was the next thing I could do to be promoted? I was always thinking ahead. And I love that about myself. I love that I can push
Very
myself and
Capricorn of
see.
you.
I mean, yes. And I was a single mom, and so I was always like, how can I make life better? How can I do more to make our lives easier? And so I like that about myself, but I also feel like I missed a lot of the stuff happening because I was always looking ahead. So I would say, like,
Yeah.
just enjoy stuff. Like, enjoy it while it's
Yeah.
happening. You're going to get where you need to go, and the journey is not going to go any way you thought it would. Like, the dream
Yeah.
job is going to be the worst job you ever had. You're going to get fired from it, and then that's going to put you on the path to where you are now. So, like,
Yeah.
just let life happen. I guess is
Oh
the
my
core of
goodness.
what I would tell her, is just like, let life happen.
I love that so much. I love both things that you said, like don't be afraid to be seen. I think that is such a huge thing now, and it I mean, you can be seen on the internet, you can be seen in real life, you can be seen in so many different ways, and I think people have a fear of being seen, especially now because of the internet
Yeah.
and internet bullies and whatever. And one thing I want to say is like you can block them. Like
Honestly, it's
if
the
if
greatest invention
someone
ever.
yeah, if someone does decide to comment something mean, they're probably not going to. You can block them. And also just think about like even the most wonderful humans on the face of this planet get hate or get a
Yeah.
little bit of internet bullies if they are big enough on social media. And it's like you're never like there's always going to be somebody that doesn't like you, and it's just like whatever. Like that is
Yeah.
on
The
them. That is
bullies the bullies are good for engagement sometimes. So
thank you for the engagement also.
yes, thank
No,
you.
so
Keep
true.
commenting. It's only helping me.
Yes. No, literally. Thank you so much for the engagement. I'm going to get my bag.
Yeah.
No, for real. And then I loved what you said too about just like being in the present moment, because I think business owners, entrepreneurs, Capricorns,
Yeah,
we are
especially.
constantly like looking forward, like what's the next thing, what's the next thing. And like while that's healthy for your growth, I do think like be where your feet are. Like, are you recognizing how awesome what you have already is? Like, are you being grateful for where you are now?
Yeah.
Because if not, you're just going to be chasing something that doesn't exist, you know?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and I think that in this like time of our world, I just think everything moves so fast. I sound like a grandma right now, but like everything moves so fast. Life goes by in a blink. Like, yesterday my kid was 2, she's 19 now. Like, it just goes by so fast. So, like,
Yes.
really finding a way to enjoy where you are, even if you have big dreams and goals, I think is like something that is really hard to do, because you're always
So
being
hard.
pushed to like especially women. Oh my God, the pressure
Yeah.
of just being a
Yeah.
woman. So it's finding ways to just like be happy with the success that you have and where you've come, and still having big dreams and goals, but like still just like enjoying where you
Yeah.
are.
I think it feels hard because they feel like opposites. Like it can feel like if you're really happy with where you are now, that you'll lose all motivation to
Yeah.
do anything bigger. And that's just not true. So I
Right.
love that.
That's not true.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here. I love this
Thank you.
conversation, and we'll have to chat again soon.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Bye. First, I want to say thank you so much for being here and listening to my podcast. It means the world to me, and I just appreciate this community more than you could ever know. If you love this episode or a previous episode that you've listened to, go ahead and head to the leave a review link in the show notes and leave us a review. We would really appreciate it. And we're so glad that you're here. Thank you.